Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today we have a great show. We're going to cover the NBA All-Star Game reactions, what I thought of it, and what we thought about fixing it. There's some breaking MLB news all over today with spring training underway. The NFL franchise tag date is fastly approaching us. We'll go over some players that I think may or may not get tagged. And finally, we'll cover a secret fourth segment that you should all stick around for. I think you'll really enjoy. But before we get too far into this episode, remember that if you would like to skip the queue, ask me a question or anything, all you need to do is go to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork/tip. Again, that's streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork/tip. That's where you can leave a tip. Again, skip that line, and it will pop up right here on my screen. Without further ado, let's get right into it. The NBA All-Star Game, All-Star festivities happened over the weekend, and it was we'll call it underwhelming game. The game itself, the Eastern Conference ended up winning 212 to 186. And even though the East did end up putting 212 points up on the board, it was a really boring game. You know, it was an exhibition, and we all know it was an exhibition, but they didn't care. And that always has been the biggest issue with the NBA All-Star Game, and really with the NBA in general. You look at the way the regular season is handled by a lot of these players, and it's the same kind of not caring attitude that leads to all these issues we have with the season, all these players not playing, all these complaints that the fans have. And since the NBA is a business, we all know the solution to it. The solution is to cut out more games, to make them mean more. But the NBA is never going to do that. That's just not something that you would want to do as a business. So this is an issue that they need to find more creative ways to solve. Now, the All-Star Game in general, there were some positives. Now, the Steph Curry versus Sabrina Ionescu 3-point shooting contest was a massive success on the weekend. It was one of those events that was just really fun to watch. You had Ionescu put up 26 points, and Curry put up 29. 26 would have won the NBA 3-point contest. It tied with Dame Lillard, who ended up winning the NBA 3-point contest. An incredible showing from Sabrina Ionescu. What she did out there was incredible. But unfortunately, the bigger story coming out of that, not coming out of that contest, wasn't how good both of them shot. It wasn't how good both of them performed, but it was the commentary from the people covering the event. There were a lot of remarks made by Kenny Smith after the event was over, saying she should have shot from a women's line. She was shooting with WNBA balls, which she was. She was shooting with WNBA balls, but that's just what she's used to. That's what she uses in the games. It wouldn't make sense for her to switch over to the other one. There's nothing wrong with that. And the reaction, not just the reaction, the immediate reaction of it being so strong, so strongly negative towards her. Oh, she never stood a chance. Oh, she should have shot from the women's line, is ridiculous. You saw what she did. She put up 26 points in that contest. 26 points. Again, I'd like to reiterate this here. That would have won the NBA 3-point contest this year. That did win the NBA 3-point contest this year. And you have people coming out there and immediately trashing her is really not okay. Is really not good for the sport. I mean, it's supposed to be a celebration. The All-Star Game is not just of the NBA, but also of its other leagues. You know, Mac McClung from the G League, he's won the dunk contest twice in a row. You know, that's really helped that league grow from, I mean, it's not as huge as these other ones, but it's really helped that league grow a little bit. And then the WNBA as well. You see there's plenty of events where stars of the WNBA come and participate. And that 3-point contest with Steph was one of them that was the highlight of the weekend. And instead of us sitting here and talking about how we can fix the All-Star Game or how we can, you know, have these conversations with how incredible these women are in the WNBA, we're sitting here talking about a commentator of the event. We're sitting here and we're talking about the just awful comments that were made right after. And it really is a shame because they performed incredibly. Now, as I mentioned, Mac McClung, he won the dunk contest for the second year in a row. Mac McClung is not in the NBA. He is in the G League for the 76ers, I believe. And this year he dunked over Shaq. The dunk contest, it had Jaylen Brown back in it. Jaylen Brown was back in the dunk contest. And it was the first time in a while that a true star in the league has decided to participate in that contest. And it really is a shame what that dunk contest has turned into. I mean, it's not like this is a short time coming. It's been a while of disappointing dunk contest after disappointing dunk contest. And it really is more of the symptom of the All-Star Game as a whole. You know, Jaylen Brown came in, he was the first star, and he made the finals. But he wasn't the greatest. He probably shouldn't have made the finals. He made it on name value. And even with Mac McClung winning it for the second time, it wasn't one of those dunk contests that you'd be like, oh my gosh, that was incredible, that was amazing. The whole of All-Star Break, the entirety of it, was really underwhelming. And that's really the takeaway that I have. And it's a shame, because there should be a way to fix this. You know, there's plenty of every All-Star game has its issues. Every game, every single league, it is It's an exhibition. But there are certain leagues that do it really well. You know, for as much as it is an exhibition in the NFL, they've done a nice job with their skills contests as of recently, and moving it to flag football was a really good idea. Now, that didn't fix all the issues, but it made it more fun for the players. And they were having fun out there this season. And you look at sports like baseball and hockey, their all star games are really, really well done. Like the game itself, for both of them, are well done. Now, the players are there, they're having a good time and joking. In baseball, obviously, it's a little bit easier for them to just play a game of baseball. It's not super intense of a sport as compared to football and basketball and hockey. But they do a really good job of that. I mean, the home run derby with that, just the stuff surrounding it, it really feels like they did a good job. They do a really, really good job with their all star games. Uh, and hockey, a sport that is really tightly linked with basketball, not just because they play their seasons at the same time, and because they have the same amount of games, but it's a very it's just a very similar grind of the season, and they play in similar cities, same arenas. These two leagues have a lot in common. But having their all-star game, what they do with the 3v3, making it fun, the players love it. They have the celebrities out there. Everything they do is done very well. It's very well done with their all-star game. Uh, is one of those it's really is just one of those things about the NBA that there's so many issues with the All-Star game, and I think a lot of it boils down to the players. Because in every other league that we've gone over, these players are trying a little bit at least. But when you watch that NBA All-Star game, we know they're not going to try. It's just a fact of life as an NBA fan watching that game. We know they're not going to try. It's an exhibition, and they never do try. Adding stuff like that Elam ending was a really good idea for a little while. It got players to play a lot more intense at the end of the game, as long as it was close. But you see players chucking up half-court shots, and sure, they're having fun. And I'm all for that. I'm all for them having fun. This game doesn't matter. But these players, LeBron James doesn't even play. He's just there. He didn't play in the second half. The All-Star game is a shell of itself. And the festivities, which really should be the selling factor of the All-Star weekend, the festivities aren't even there. And that's the real part that's worrying to me about the NBA. Because we don't expect a good game. It's an exhibition. Anyone that expects a good game is insane, is wrong, honestly. But coming out there and putting up duds in these skills competitions, in the dunk contest, in the 3-point contest outside of Sabrina Ionescu versus Steph Curry, that extra little part, it really is concerning. And there's not a lot of great ways to fix it. You could go and add little incentives to each player in each quarter to get them to play a little more. You could go and add some of these other stuff to incentives to get the players to play more, but it's not going to work. That little stuff. You need to completely revamp the weekend. Add more one-on-ones maybe, and there's a lot of stuff wrong with the NBA All-Star, but the fact that the ancillary events that isn't the game itself are also duds is really a shame. So that's what I'd like to see changed in the future here with the NBA. The All-Star weekend was very underwhelming, but we'll see if they make any changes in the future, anything they can do. But come back next segment, we will be talking about some major MLB moves as we get closer and closer to opening day.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't replace all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits some losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live, I choose to dip, you choose to fight, or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, everybody, welcome back. Thank you for sticking around through that break. We have a big segment for you coming up right now. But first, just a reminder, if you would like to leave a comment or respond to anything I have to say, remember, you can skip that line by going to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork/tip. Leave a tip, leave a message. It will come up on the screen right there. We'll read it out for everyone. Again, that's streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork/tip. We appreciate anything you leave for us. But without further ado, let's get right into our second segment here. There's been some major spring training news all around the MLB. Players are starting to report. Pitchers and catchers reported last week. Players are in, and spring training is officially underway in the MLB. And with that, we hit the MLB news cycle. It starts to flare up again. And some of the bigger news that's happened this week, today, the Washington Nationals owner, Ted Leonsis, has officially pulled the Washington Nationals from the selling block. It was put on the sales block 2 or 3 years ago, unsuccessfully, obviously. But it is now officially off of the block, and the Nationals will not be sold. Now, this is a big news story, probably more for people in the Washington, D.C. area, because the people that were most likely going to buy the Nationals, were the people that already own the Capitals and the Wizards and the Mystics. And they have been not so popular as of recently, with some proposed moves of the stadium outside of D.C. But the Nationals will not be sold, at least as of yet. So, some other news coming out of spring training. We had a signing. Liam Hendriks signed a 2-year deal with the Boston Red Sox. 2-year deal. Now, Liam Hendriks here, he did have Tommy John at the end of last season, so he won't be able to come back until the end of the year. But he has shown the ability to come back from some major injuries and issues before. Obviously, he had leukemia last season, came back, pitched, is still an elite pitcher. So he has the ability to be a very good closing piece for the Boston Red Sox, who could use a nice little piece like that. Outside of that, some news probably on the Angels front is where the biggest news of the day came out. Mike Trout, one of the greatest players of all time and of our generation, he officially said he did not want to be traded, and he actually is pushing the Angels to make a big move and compete. And I'm shocked that it's taking this for the Angels to make a big move. You talk about a guy in Mike Trout who, like I mentioned, is, you could make the argument, is the greatest baseball player to ever play the game of baseball. And he's only ever been to one playoff game. He had Shohei Ohtani on his team. He had Anthony Rendon. Now, granted, Anthony Rendon has not been healthy in his time with the Angels, but the whole team has never been good with him. And it really is one of those greatest failures in sports. The fact that you get a generational talent at 27th in the draft and you do nothing with them. You do nothing with two of the greatest baseball players on earth at the same time. It really is a failure, and it's pathetic that the Angels have had no success at all. It's one of those things that's, you look back 20 years from now at a guy like Mike Trout, and it's gonna hurt his legacy. The Angels need to make a run with Mike Trout. This isn't a fan, me talking. I'm a Nationals fan. But Mike Trout, for the sake of his legacy, they need to make a run. I personally don't want his legacy to be a failure, one of not being able to win. He is one of the greatest baseball players. He is, of all time. And he has not been able to get the support around him. He's made one wild card game, just one, in his entire career. And it's really sad. Now, the main issue for the Angels has always been pitching. And there's some great pitchers out there on the market. You have the reigning Cy Young winner from the NL still out there, unsigned, which is insane, by the way. The amount of great players that still have not been signed 5 days into pitchers and catchers reporting. Blake Snell is still out there. Now, he is a little bit older, but this is a guy that's won 2 Cy Youngs in his career and is coming off just winning one. He has a deal on the table reportedly with the Yankees, but I think the Angels absolutely should go get him. That's a great fit for him with the Angels. It's one of those moves that, as loyal as Mike Trout is, and he's honestly probably too loyal for his own good, because he's never going to leave the Angels, but he should. He deserves to leave the Angels, and he never is going to. But him pushing this organization, pushing them to be aggressive, to make these moves, what they did, if you remember back to the trade deadline of last season, when the Angels made a bunch of head-scratching moves. They traded for some players, and then they lost a couple games, and they got rid of everyone. Back then, it was a push for Ohtani, because if they didn't make the playoffs, he wasn't coming back. And then Ohtani leaves. And credit to the Angels for trying, but they gave up immediately. It wasn't, oh well, we're done. It was, we are out of here. We are not competing anymore. Drop everything. Cut everyone. And it really just shows the Angels' ownership. What they've done is probably, the owner there is probably the worst owner in all of sports. Definitely the worst owner in baseball. Probably the worst owner in sports. Having wasted so much talent, overpaying guys that don't need to be paid, underpaying guys that should be paid, not getting and making these moves that need to be made to make a competing team. The Angels are really a broken team. And it's a shame, because they've had these generational talents, because they've had so many good players that they're just wasting. Another player on their roster, Anthony Rendon, switching lanes a little bit, And I don't know if it really is, because he came out today and he said that baseball has been a job. It's always been a job for him. He's never he's never been his passion. It's been his job. And I don't know if this is a new thing with the Angels, but I remember him with the Nationals. He never seemed to have any of this. And we go back to that ownership. He got that massive deal. And he's been hurt ever since. And it happens. It's not his fault that he's hurt. But coming out and saying that, I know a lot of players feel that way probably. A lot of players feel that it's their job. Like if they weren't making money, they wouldn't be doing this, you know. It's a chore for them to go do this. A lot of players feel that way, I'm sure. But to come out and say it is a different thing. You know, most people in the public would kill to do what you are doing for a living. And I understand that's an unfair double standard to have. You don't have to love your job. You really don't. We don't expect people to. I don't expect baseball players or professional athletes to universally love their job, to universally fall in love with what they're doing and feel like they're never working a day in their life. We don't expect that. But it is that kind of thing that you kind of want to keep behind closed doors. Is the kind of thing that you want to not say out loud. And it's not an issue that he did. But now, if he doesn't have a good season, people are going to go back to this. Or if he gets hurt again, God forbid. People are going to go back to this interview and they're going to be like, oh, he's not actually hurt. He's not actually doing all this. He's not. Hold on. Want to chill out with the dishes for a second?
Oh, the dishes are too loud?
I mean, a little bit.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Anyway, if he gets hurt, God forbid, there's going to be cries that, oh, he's not actually hurt. He's faking it. He doesn't want to go into work today. He's done. And it's a shame because player injuries are serious. You know, you never want to. It's a personal rule of thumb of mine to never do analysis based off of injuries, based off of potential injuries, based off of current injuries. Now, it's a little more fair to do it off current injuries because you know. But it's a personal rule of mine that I never do analysis based off of the potential for someone to get hurt, based off of, oh, they're injury prone, so that means that they're going to get hurt again, or they are faking an injury, or they are playing it up for the cameras. It's a personal rule of mine that injuries are injuries. We don't speak them into existence, and we don't wish ill will or anything based on recovery, because anything can happen with injuries. But other people aren't. You know, Anthony Rendon already has a lot of injury questions in his career, and it's a shame because when he's been on the field, he's been so good. But if anything, God forbid, is to happen to him this season, people are going to come after him, and he's not going to be in. And the public outcry on if it's a long-term injury or an injury that might take a little bit longer than other people's to heal, it's just a shame, and it's one of those things that I dislike about sports the most. The way we ridicule people for being hurt, because they can't control that. But on the other side of this break, we will jump into some NFL news, some NFL coverage. Franchise tags are coming up, so stay tuned. We will be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found. For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sitting through that break. Remember, before we get into our franchise tag segment here, that you can leave a tip for us on this video. Let your comment get to the very top of our list, or leave a comment in the YouTube comment section. All you need to do is go to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork/tip. Leave a tip. Your message will come right across the screen for me and everybody else to see. Again, that's streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork/tip. Now, the NFL franchise tag window opens up in just a couple days. I believe on the 21st, so 2 days from now on Wednesday, the franchise tag window opens up. So, with that being said, there are some major free agents on a lot of teams that need to be dealt with. I guess dealt with is not the right word. There's decisions for teams to make here. Are you going to use your franchise tag? Now, to go over what a franchise tag is, for everyone that is unsure, the franchise tag is a 1-year fully guaranteed deal that is based off of the top 5 at each position. So what the NFL does is it takes the yearly salaries of the top 5 NFL players at that position. So for instance, quarterback, they take the top 5 salaries per year and they take the average of it, and this year it comes out to $36 million. And that is what is fully guaranteed, a 1-year fully guaranteed deal. Now, some players that are in this tag conversation, you can only be tagged 3 times in your career, or in a row. So guys like Kirk Cousins cannot be franchise tagged anymore. So he is not in discussion here. But there are some other guys, Saquon Barkley, who did not end up signing his franchise tag last season, got a different deal that was basically a franchise tag. He can play for the Giants, is someone on here. Mike Evans, some of these bigger free agents that teams might not have a great chance of signing otherwise might get slapped with this franchise tag. So CBS Sports put out a nice article going through every single team that they think might use their franchise tag. First one here is the Ravens using it on Justin Madubuike, who had an incredible season. He went through, I believe, like a 12-game stretch where he had a sack in every single game. He was being compared to Aaron Donald. Which is one of the best comparisons you can probably get. Being compared to one of the greatest players in NFL history at your position. But next to him, some other major free agents that might get the tag, and he'll probably end up getting the tag. You have guys like Brian Burns with the Panthers, who They could have traded him for 2 firsts a couple years ago, if you remember. If you remember, he could have been traded. The Rams were offering a lot for Brian Burns. Brian Burns is one of the best edge rushers, linebackers in football, and he's on the Panthers. He does not want to sign. He doesn't want to re-sign based on everything that went on in the last season or so. It seems like he will not sign. So a franchise tag for him is most likely what's going to happen. An interesting one on their list here, T. Higgins. A lot of people are saying there's no way that the Bengals can keep him. There's no way that the Bengals can keep him. A franchise tag might keep him around one more year, but we don't know if he even wants to come around another year. He could make a lot of money in free agency. He's probably the best receiver out there in free agency, outside of maybe Mike Evans. If you wanted to compare the two, he's due for a payday, and adding him on that franchise tag, keeping him around, it'd be huge for the Bengals. I'm not sure if they're going to end up using the franchise tag on him, but if I were them, I would. You got to keep him around for another year. Another receiver that might receive it, we just talked about Mike Evans, but the Bucs have a lot of other candidates, so I would be shocked if Mike Evans was the one that received it. You have Baker Mayfield as well, who they seem like they might pay. A report came out earlier today with Mike Evans saying he wants to see what they do with Baker before he signs. So I don't know if he wants them to keep Baker or he wants them to not keep Baker. That's probably something that they have had conversations about. But also Antoine Winfield Jr., the safety, he's coming off one of the best seasons for a safety in a really long time. So they have a lot of options on who they can franchise tag. I personally would use it on whoever you can't get a deal with. My number one priority for that franchise tag probably would be Antoine Winfield. He is a game changer on defense. Keeping him around would be huge for them. But then the big question with the franchise tag, the same one as last season, Saquon Barkley. All reports seem to be suggesting that Saquon Barkley wants out of New York. And with him being basically that entire offense, the entire offense for New York basically being Saquon Barkley, he has every right to want a big contract, want out. Now, if the Giants had given him that contract at the end of last season, which they should have done, he was offered contracts, to be fair, but they weren't big contracts. And Saquon is a running back that he's going to want a deal long term. He's not going to want to get franchise tag. Again, these players don't have a lot of choice. The Giants need Saquon Barkley. So I would be surprised if, in as much as they need him, as much as they do, I would be surprised if he did not get a franchise tag from them. Now, I doubt he would sign that franchise tag. Again, he excuse me. He refused to sign that franchise tag at the end of at the beginning of last season, which led to a whole bunch of other issues. You remember the whole running back not being paid of last season. Saquon Barkley was in the center of that. But I think the Giants will slap another tag on him. Hopefully they can reach a deal. But if not, I would be surprised if they do not tag him, because I don't see a way that New York lets him go. The Dolphins, Christian Wilkins, the defensive tackle, is the guy on the list here. Christian Wilkins, another game wrecker on the interior. He is a huge part of that much improved Miami defense. Being able to stop the run is a huge piece, and he's very good at that. And he also is good at getting pressure on the passer. So if that defense can stay healthy and stay together, I'm not sure if they're actually going to use the tag on him. But there's a lot of guys out here. I think only about a third of the teams in the league this year will even possibly use the franchise tag. You know, obviously the Ravens, the Giants, the Bucks. The Colts might use it on Michael Pittman Jr. here. He is entering free agency. He's just had a huge season. He's been their wide receiver one ever since T.Y. Hilton stopped being as effective. He's been really good for them. And outside of him, they have Josh Downs, solid receiver. Not sure if he's a number one type guy. But letting him walk might be a mistake. Now, honestly, I think they'll come to a long-term deal with Michael Pittman. I think they'll be able to come to some kind of agreement, and he will get tagged. He won't end up getting tagged. But overall, the guys that I think definitely will get tagged, T. Higgins, Brian Burns, Saquon Barkley, and Antoine Winfield Jr. I think those guys are definitely getting tagged. But if some of these other guys like Michael Pittman or Tony Pollard can't work out deals, then I think you're looking at those guys getting franchise tagged as well. And it brings up another conversation about the running back market. I know second year in a row we'll be talking about the running back market, but you have guys like Saquon, and you have guys like Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, Austin Eckler, Josh Jacobs, all up for contract or franchise tag again this season. It's going to be something for us to keep an eye out on. What are these players going to get? Are we finally paying running backs after just Jonathan Taylor got paid? After Christian McCaffrey, he got paid a little while ago. But are we finally going to start paying running backs again? What are the numbers looking like for these guys? Because running back position is a very fickle one. And then the wide receivers as well. It's not the most electrifying wide receiver free agent class, but especially if the headliners like T. Higgins and Michael Pittman end up getting franchise tagged. But there's a lot to look out for coming up in this NFL offseason. And the franchise tag window opens up tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. So if you come back after this next break, we will be covering the 49ers defensive coordinator position opening, a couple names that may or may not fit in there that I've heard getting thrown around, as well as what the 49ers might do with a guy like Brandon Ayuk, who's been rumored to get traded. So stick around. We will be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for waiting through that break. Like I mentioned, we have a big segment to close out our show here. We'll be talking about that 49ers defensive coordinator opening, some big names, some surprising names that I've heard being tossed around, and the potential of Brandon Ayuk being traded. What that might look like, if it's even a good idea for the 49ers to do. But before we get too far into this segment, just remember that if you would like to have anything you say pop up on our screen, you can go to streamelements.com/GSMC/sportsnetwork/tip. Again, streamelements.com/GSMC/sportsnetwork/tip to leave a tip. We appreciate anything you guys put in there, any donations you leave. But without further ado, let's just get right into it. 49ers defensive coordinator. 49ers fired their defensive coordinator, Steve Wilkes, right after the Super Bowl. Super Bowl in which that defense played out of their minds. Super Bowl in which the defense shut down one of the most prolific quarterbacks of all time in Patrick Mahomes. So who's going to go in and replace it? Replace him. We've heard a couple names, or I've heard a couple names out there. A couple that obviously are not going to happen. A couple that I would be shocked if they happened. But let's start with the wild ones. Robert Saleh is a name that I've heard out there as coming back, leaving a NFL head coaching job and being a defensive coordinator, a job that he held before he became the head coach of the Jets. Now, he did not have a lot of success with the Jets recently, but to leave an NFL head coaching job for a coordinating job boggles my mind. The fact that that's even a conversation is insane to me. And I know Chip Kelly kind of just did the same thing. He was the head coach at UCLA, went to a fellow Big Ten school to be the offensive coordinator. But that's not nearly the same thing. For almost every single coach in the NFL, not every single one, almost every single coach in football, the goal is to become a head coach. The goal is to become an NFL head coach. But if you turn down that job, you turn down that opportunity and leave willingly, not just retiring. Retiring is understandable. You're done. But to leave for a lesser job, to leave for a coordinator's job, is something that I have no idea how anyone got that in their minds. That would cross their minds. Robert Saleh's main goal all of last season was to not get fired. He did a good job of that. He didn't get fired. His goal was accomplished. Once Aaron Rodgers went down, he was scrambling to not get fired. So, having him as a name for the coaching job is insane to me. Now, that's the most outlandish name I've heard. But there's another name out there that I heard tossed around. One that, makes a little more sense, but doesn't make much sense to me at all. One that has a good amount of traction, maybe just because of the name value. But a name that I've heard tossed around a bunch, Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick to the 49ers as their defensive coordinator. And we'll go down a list of pros and cons, because there are pros and there are cons to making this hire. We'll start positive. We're positive here at Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. We're a very positive show. So we'll start there with the positives. Positive number one, It's Bill Belichick. That's positive number one. Positive number two, he is one of, if not the greatest coach of all time, and one of, if not the greatest defensive minds of all time. That's 2 and 3. That's 3 positives right away. Positive number 4, that defense is great. I can only imagine what they would be under Bill Belichick. And positive number 5, that would be a huge pull for free agents. That not that that defense needs anything, but having Bill Belichick in the building probably won't just help the defense. It'll help the offense. It'll help the special teams. It might help them get over the hump. Bill Belichick is a guy that's won more than any other coach in the Super Bowl. So, bringing him in might serve a bunch of purposes. But the real negative here is having a guy like that be a coordinator on your team. Under Kyle Shanahan, I'm sure that he would still have control. Kyle Shanahan seems like the type of coach that would still be able to control that roster, even with a guy as gravitational as Bill Belichick. A guy with as much weight to his words and pull as Bill Belichick. And when the problems start to come in, is not with the fit, not with the scheme, but with the personnel on the staff, right? Bill Belichick, as we mentioned, is such a huge name. He's the greatest coach of all time. And he's going to be under Kyle Shanahan. What if they get into an argument? Who are the players going to pick in that situation? I understand Kyle Shanahan has his culture set, and he's done a very good job with that team. But if they get into an argument, a major argument, a minor one, whatever, but if they get into some major argument, who are they going to follow? Are they going to just ignore Bill Belichick and what he has to say? A guy who is second most wins in NFL history as a head coach. A guy who has won 7 Super Bowls. A guy who coached the greatest dynasty in sports for 20 years. Are they going to just ignore him? Are they going to just move on and trust their coach? I'm sure it won't be a big deal, but it's one of those things that's in the back of my mind, that's rotting my brain of who would they follow in this situation? That is a catastrophic DEFCON 5 whatever issue, with that big of a split. That would ruin a team. And that's my main concern with bringing in a guy like Bill Belichick. Not that it wouldn't be the best possible coaching hire, because it probably would be. If I'm being honest with you, it probably would be. And there probably wouldn't be any issues, because Bill Belichick doesn't seem like the type of guy that would take a job and cause issues. But there's always that thought. He's had total control of a franchise for 20 years now. GM, head of president of player operations and all that good stuff, head coach. He has had a total control over that Patriots organization for 20 years. And now that he's just a coordinator, I'm sure he can handle it, but that ego, it's there. As I'm sure as good as he is at controlling it, it's gonna be there. And there's gonna be moments where he's going to outshine Kyle Shanahan if he's there. And how will Kyle Shanahan handle that? Now, obviously, I'm talking about this like this has happened, but it hasn't. It's just some pros and cons to think about. Will it be a great hire if it happens? Absolutely it will. Are there some potential drawbacks? Absolutely. We'll just have to see how it is handled. The other name that I've seen out there is Pete Carroll. Again, these are all huge names. They're honestly probably going to not choose one. They're probably not going to hire any of these big names. They're probably going to go with a smaller name. Maybe promote from the inside. But Pete Carroll wouldn't be as bad. Now it wouldn't be as good. He is again, you take him from Seattle, you get maybe some heads up on your division, your biggest competition in the division. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there. And last name that I've been hearing is Brandon Staley, who was the defensive coordinator for the Rams before he was the head coach of the Chargers, and I just don't think that's a great fit. I think he needs some time off from football before he gets another job. But Bill Belichick there's been a lot of buzz around it. So, let me know what you guys think. I'm curious about your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. Who do you think should get that job? Do you think Bill Belichick? You think there's any cons to Bill Belichick getting hired? What's going on there? And then real quick before we end our show, the 49ers have been rumored to trade to be looking at trade partners for Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk has one more year before he's going to want a contract. A contract that the 49ers quite honestly can't pay, especially if they want to end up keeping Brock Purdy. But having him in there, what he does as a blocker, as a receiving threat out on the outside, is huge. But it's not something I'm convinced they can't replace. I was talking to a friend of mine who is a 49ers fan, and he keeps going on and on about how Brandon Ayuk is so important to this team because and how hard it is going to be to replace him because of the scheme that he fits. Now, I'm not as convinced. I think you could go out and get a guy like Michael Pittman, and he could do exactly what Brandon Ayuk is doing, but better. Or a guy like T. Higgins, if they get off of that franchise tag, to go and do what he does or better. Now, it wouldn't be the exact same. What Brandon Ayuk does as a blocker is very underrated, and that's why I'm sure my friend thinks this scheme is irreplaceable, but it absolutely is. Blocking is taught. These receivers can do it, especially if they all buy in. But yeah, thank you, everybody, so much for tuning into this episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Remember to tune in every single weekday, 5 to 6, on every streaming platform. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We will be back next time. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.